welcome back to the Rupert and Pinchy Show. We are continuing to react to our first episode that we did, and we might have more thoughts and maybe some things to clarify, or maybe even disagreements with ourselves. We'll see what happens. Thank you for joining, and please subscribe if you enjoy these videos. We appreciate your time.
Good morning.
Good morning.
You want me to hit it?
Yeah, I'm ready.
All right. Here we go. Not doing all the hundreds of things before Kazakhstan.
Okay.
Then I'm just deceiving myself and I'm virtue signaling. I'm feeling good about an action I'm taking.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's why, when if Jesus were to say, hey, I would really like you to get me a cup of coffee. And we went to go get his cup of coffee and thought, well, you know what? I know he likes beer. I think I'm just going to get him a Leinenkugels.
Right.
And we bring it to him and we think he's going to be pleased.
Right.
And he would be like, well, thank you for the Leinies, but I really wanted coffee.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like friends that we have, family members.
Well, I do have a thought on this part so far.
Yeah.
That I think is just interesting. There is obviously the main point we are getting at is we are called to do what is asked of us, and not focus on things that are not our priorities. It is true, though, that there's some times where we have to act intentionally, and I guess what would the term be? I'm trying to remember. There's a certain term. Oh, take the initiative, and making decisions even without second thinking about it. But we are called to do our duties first, what we are directly called to do, and to prioritize those things. I don't know if that's important, but I think it can be.
10-4.
Whenever
Continue.
you're ready.
If I really like chocolate ice cream, yeah, I do, and you hate chocolate ice cream, or tolerate chocolate ice cream, but strawberry is your favorite, and I'm coming over to your house, and I bring chocolate ice cream because I think I'm going to bless you, because I really want to give you something nice. No, I'm really giving that to myself. Whereas I would bring the strawberry over because I knew that's what you wanted. Where am I going with that?
Well, basically you're saying we have imperatives that we are supposed to follow, and we think something is more important, or we think it's like, why would you give me this task? This is like, you could have given me such a better task. And then but we are where we are for a reason, and and so we got to do stuff.
Okay, pause.
And we got to do what's right, even if we think we know what's better. Well, you've always brought up the story of the is it Elijah or Elisha, of the guy saying, I need to be healed, and he says, dip yourself 7 times in the water, and he was reluctant to do so, if I remember correctly. But it's that's an example of what we're getting at here. It's like, we could be like, this is stupid. What am I doing? I'm just dipping myself in the water 7 times, and that's going to heal me. And it's like, well, the method isn't. Well, okay. I'm sorry. I'm trying to recall what I was getting at.
Well, it's not superfluous.
Yeah, exactly.
The method was specific.
Yep, exactly.
Well, and so, if the guy said, I don't like the Jordan, because I think he said to go dip yourself in the Jordan. What if he said, I'm just going to go dip myself in my bathtub at home, or I'm going to dip myself in milk? It's like, no, he said, go dip in the water in Jordan. And that has some connotations for the New Testament about baptism. Yeah. No milk won't do. Coke won't do. Even Leinenkugels, as good as it is.
Even Leinenkugels.
Yeah.
That was unneeded to say.
They're one of our sponsors. They're
No.
not, but um, um, so yeah. You want me to continue?
Yeah. What's best?
Mm-hmm.
And that's
Mm-hmm.
kind of the thing is we need to have our priorities straight of how do we look at the world? Do we look at it as the world is all bad and everything is falling apart? Or are we the kind of people that's like, well, everything's fine and dandy, everything will turn out,
Right.
and we have different misconstruing of how we look at the world, and we let the news and everything inundate us, or we try and change the world, you know.
Well, and a lot of times, a person, especially Christians, can get a savior complex. They're out to save the world. No, Christ saved the world.
Mm-hmm.
And then he wants to save us and conform us to his image. And if we will do what he asks us to do, then the other things will take care of themselves. You know, Paul says that the whole purpose of the main purpose is that we have a true love from a sincere heart. If we could have that true love
From sincere heart.
from a sincere heart, we would have everything.
Mm-hmm.
So,
What is love?
yeah. So we have to take care of what our responsibilities are, and everyone knows what everyone could list what their responsibilities are. And the thing is, a lot of times we've never listed them.
Right.
Even just within our mind. If we did, we would realize, you know what? I don't need to worry about my cousin Bob first. It's my son Jerry or my daughter Karen that should be my main concern. Bob does need help, but I first need to make sure I'm taking care of Karen and Jimmy or whatever
Yeah.
name I use there.
Pause.
And so,
Again, it goes back to what JD Vance said about getting our priorities straight, which is funny because I don't know. I just, when I was looking through my feed and seeing everyone like, is this true? Is this biblical? I'm like, it's true. It's biblical. I mean, come on. And the amount of questioning videos that there were, I was a little confused. Like, my title would be, yes, it is biblical. Like, that would literally be my title. Is J.D. Vance right? Yes. But it's just true. It's just how things work. You need to get your priorities straight. Who are you concerned about? You're concerned about your vocations, which is kind of part. It's a good exercise to list your vocations. Like, who am I and what am I supposed to do in those relationships? Like, I am a student. I am a church member. I am a son. I am a grandson. So if you list everything out, or I am a citizen of this country, if I list all those things out, we ask, what am I supposed to do in each of those roles? It's a very healthy thing to ask, because, I mean, for instance, as a son, I should be respectful to my parents. As a grandson, I should be also respectful to my grandparents and seek to spend time with them. I'm called to do that because I am a son and a grandson. But also, as a citizen, I'm called to vote. I'm called to do things for that relate to country business here. And then as a church member, I need to be involved and to go to church and things like that. So if we list out our vocations, or what our roles are, then we can figure out what are we supposed to do in these. And I think it's a very healthy exercise
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
to get our priorities straight. What are we supposed
Yeah.
to do in these different roles that we've been given?
Yeah, it's not rocket science. I mean,
Right.
it just takes and we don't even need to go to the scripture to figure that out. You know, non-religious people know that hey, I need to um, listen to my parents or to my principal, for example, or whatever. It doesn't take a lot, but yeah, you're absolutely right.
Go
We
ahead.
need to identify what are those things within our control,
Yep.
and not only control with responsibility.
Exactly.
Americans, freedom-loving people around the world, love to talk about liberty.
Mm-hmm.
With every liberty comes a duty,
Exactly.
or duties.
Yeah.
and so and so. Anyway, we have duties to those things that are under our concern. We have responsibilities, and that's where sometimes all the time it takes faith. You have 24 hours in a day, and those 24 hours need to be appropriated where they need to be appropriated based on the hierarchy of priority.
Yep.
And proximity. Are they within your area of concern? Yes. Are they within your area of control? No. Then pray about the concern. Focus on what you can control.
Yep.
So, but we don't do that to the degree we need to, and I think we can show real examples of what we're talking about.
Yeah.
The world is going to impress itself upon us. Like you said, the battle, the war, it's at our door. We don't have to go look for it.
Right.
Now, some people have bigger battles than others. I'm a single person, so I can make decisions on the fly because no one is counting on me to provide food, clothing, and shelter. Okay? So, and if I make a decision for example, if the government says you have to do X, Y, and Z in order to buy food, and I decide, no, I don't agree with that. It's easier for me because then the only mouth potentially that I'm going to starve is my own. So everybody has varying responsibilities and within their lives, and some have it easier to make certain decisions, some have it harder. But we need to start making those hard and easy decisions that approach us at the front door.
Well, is it Peter or Paul that talks about the virtues of being single and the virtues of being married? Is like, if you're married, you have to deal with dealing with your family and helping them. Your duty is to them, so you can't just give up. What would it? It's harder for you because you are not only bound to yourself. You're bound to someone else and what they need.
Sometimes we.
Well, that needs clarification. Can you pause? That definitely needs clarification. Duty to God, because I guess you always have a duty to yourself. I think, not selfishly, but you always have to at least, survive, right? But what the concern is in Paul, what he's saying, is that the one that is married has more things to worry about than one that isn't, and who can spend more time contemplating the Lord, or doing missionary work and stuff like that, or being a pastor, things like that. So I guess the duty is more about your duty to God than duty to yourself. I don't know if, the way that we're talking about it, we are talking about how there are certain things that we are called to do when we're married, or certain things that we're called to do when we're not. But the emphasis in Paul is about duty to the Lord specifically.
Yeah.
So I just think that was just a little bit unclear.
Well, I think it's funny. I was thinking that, we talked about Peter and Paul. Well, Jesus one time was telling the disciples about marriage or whatever. After answering the Pharisees, and his disciples said to him, "Lord, then it's better that we not marry." If it's that difficult. And then Jesus gives us that saying where he says, well, there are some who are born eunuchs, there are some that are made eunuchs, and then there are some who make themselves eunuchs for the glory of the kingdom. And whoever is able to accept this, let him accept it. And so, yeah.
Poor Origin.
Huh?
Poor origin.
Yeah.
You know what I'm referring to, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah. So, yeah, he took that a little bit too literally.
Yes.
So anyway, yeah. Should I continue on?
Yeah, go ahead.
Presented in such a way that singleness or not being married is exalted above being married.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's really the intent there at all. It's everybody is called. Paul also goes, remain in the state to which you were called. If you're married, remain married. If you're unmarried, remain unmarried and focus on God. And even that wasn't a command from the Lord. But what I want to talk about there, or what I want to emphasize there, is that God gives us a free will and choice. And if we choose to be married, that's a wonderful choice. It just comes with different responsibilities.
Yeah.
More responsibilities.
It's a different calling.
If you want to, if you feel that you're called to preach the gospel, to be a pastor, to be a priest, you have to understand that that's not like a 8 to 5 Monday through Friday job. Just like, and that's where it's exactly the same as a parent. Oh, I'm a parent 80 hours a week. No, you're a parent
all the time,
all week, right?
Yep.
And so the minister or the priest or the pastor is the same as a mother or father. They are committed full time.
Yep. Well, we have jobs that we are involved in, and we have a duty to pursue, and so we need to make sure that we're doing what we can when we can do it. So that basically sums up that basic message that we're trying to get out there with that, right? Is we have things we've got to do. We shouldn't become overwhelmed. We shouldn't think everything is horrible and all bad, and we shouldn't think everything is fine and dandy when it's not. We have a duty to do what's best, and what's best is being the patriot, being the person that wills the best of the country, of people, of what we can control. And so we want to be not optimists, not pessimists, but those that seek the best. And the best shows its form in the individual first. What we need to do first. What do you do first?
Well, you're referring to, we've discussed many times, G.K. Chesterton's book, Orthodoxy. And I think that's from the 4th chapter.
It is, yeah.
Flag of the World.
Yep, that's what it's called.
Where he talks about, he meant, when he was very young, he met two very interesting and odd individuals in the world, the pessimist and the optimist. And he goes on in that chapter to explain ultimately that the pessimists and optimists are not very good people. And, or more specifically, they're not very effective people.
Right.
In reality. The pessimist feels everything in the world is wrong except himself. Mm-hmm. And the optimist feels everything is right in the world except the pessimist. Okay, so the pessimist, the pessimist sees all the terrible things in the world, but doesn't love it enough to do anything about it. Mm-hmm. Okay, and the optimist doesn't love the world enough to see to look honestly at the problems. Because they're perhaps lazy and lack love. And so the challenge for G.K. Chesterton was he was trying to come up with, well, and then also, I can't remember if he goes into the realist, but I actually see the person does he? But and this might be influenced by reading Chesterton, but when I think of a realist, I think a realist is actually just a closet pessimist or an optimist.
Absolutely. I totally get that.
So if you tend to be a pessimistic person, but you recognize that pessimism and optimism are like
opposites,
not true. This is like a contradiction. Those positions are not true, but you tend to be like a pessimistic person. You then call yourself a realist. I'm just seeing things real. And I would suppose that the realist, more often than not, would end up being a closet pessimist than the optimist, don't you think?
Yeah, well, I used to be I struggle with being a pessimist. I'm more of a...
I thought you were going to say squirrel.
I've called myself a realist.
I was literally going to say this right now.
Be a pessimist.
Hide your pessimism.
Yeah, it's because I'm like, well, the world is...
You were going to say what?
I literally was about to say the same thing that I'm saying in the video. then I was gonna say pause, and then I was gonna say, yeah, I get this because and I've called myself a realist, and I tend to be pessimistic, so that's really funny. It's bad, so but
I'm just being realistic.
yeah, I'm being realistic, but the truth is that there is good and there's bad in the world, and
Yeah,
yeah,
and so Chesterton says that okay, he's trying to find what,
what's
and
better?
it came to him what is, and he realized it's neither of those. And before I even share, which many of you may already know what the answer is, I know Z knows, but what he realizes, one of the things that pessimists and optimists don't realize, when you are a person, and if you are a person, you're probably in the world. If you're in the world, it's not like you get to shop around for a world that you want to be on,
A better world or a worse world
or a better world. If you're in a country, and you're a part of a country, now technically you could shop around, but it's very difficult. But anyway, you are placed in a country. You're placed on a world that you don't have a choice. That's where you are.
Right.
So it's not like you get to shop around. So if you take the optimist side, nothing's going to work because you'll never correct any things that need to be corrected. If you take the pessimist side, you'll be tearing down everything, all the good and the bad, because all you see is the bad. Okay? So what he recognized, you have to be a patriot of that country. You have to be a patriot of the world. And that's where he came up with the galactic patriot.
Mm-hmm.
And so Pinchy and I both have kind of like really taken that to heart, that we are galactic patriots, that, you know what, we know that we know. And we also purchased online spacesuits. What the Bible says about the end. We know
too
how
bad I don't have
wickedness will become more wicked. And we know that the breath of the Lord, just the appearance of his coming, is going to slay the wicked. And we know that we know what the Bible says about. You don't have what?
I don't have my space background.
Oh, yeah, that would have been perfect. At the end, we know how wickedness will become more wicked, and we know that the breath of the Lord, just the appearance of his coming, is going to slay the wicked and bring in his kingdom. But we also know that he put us on this world to be galactic patriots, to fight for truth.
Will the best of the world for the world, but being able to say that we're flawed.
Right.
Just like,
well, and it's like love.
Yeah.
Willing the good of another.
Okay, pause. Love isn't you be whoever you. So, something that occurs to me, and I don't remember exactly everything in Orthodoxy. It's been a while since I read it. But we have to be pessimistic to acknowledge that enough to acknowledge that we are sinful, but we need to be optimistic enough to see a way out. Right? It's kind of like it's a middle ground, kind of, because the optimist tends to, reject the idea that there is something flawed in humanity, which is would be like maybe more the Pelagian side of things. Pelagius basically believing that through human effort we can save ourselves to such an extent that almost removes the need for grace, special grace that's that brings us to a supernatural. Oh goodness, I'm trying to think of the phrasage, but he thinks that basically we don't need grace, basically. And then you have the pessimist who's like, oh, we're so bad and there's no hope for us. And that's almost like the super hyper Augustinianism, or I think, well, kind of, not exactly. I guess it's more like it, because the hyper Augustinians wouldn't say we have no ability to be saved, but they would say that nothing in our human effort does anything to bring about that end in any way, shape, or form. No cooperation or anything like that. And so we got to have the middle ground, which I think there can be a middle ground, such as, is it semi-Augustinianism? Where it's like, we don't have the ability in ourselves to be saved, but we need grace, and that grace enables us, but we also need to cooperate with it, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, that's just a
Well,
couple thoughts I had.
well, and the other thing too is what we've said so far in this original video is true, but as I'm thinking, it's truly the optimist and the pessimist end up not doing anything because the pessimist thinks, "What's the point? Everything's gone to the crapola,"
Mm-hmm.
and and the optimist thinks everything's fine. So yeah, actually, neither of them do anything.
Right. Well, actually, let me add more to the optimist thing. It's like everything's fine, so what do I have to do to anything? Like,
Mm-hmm.
what's the point? It's funny because it's like, what's the point if you're a pessimist? That's what you would say. What's the point?
Mm-hmm.
Everything's terrible anyway. But then the
Mm-hmm.
optimist is like, what's the point? Everything's fine.
Right. Well, and the optimist and the pessimist are so similar in so many different ways. So the pessimist, you know, he thinks he's okay, and everyone else is screwed up. And the optimist also thinks they're okay, you know. And in both those situations, they're partly right and they're partly wrong. It's like, yeah, God created us. He created everything, and everything that he made was good, very good. But we have fallen, and we tend to be sinful, and we need grace, and we need help. And so, but anyway, yeah. Anything else?
Yes. No, that's it. Where you are. Love is you can be better. Can you go back? Can be a better person. And we're not just a little bit.
Lord, just the appearance of his coming is going to slay the wicked and bring in his kingdom. It's way too far, huh? But we also know that he put us on this world to be galactic patriots, to fight for truth.
It's will the best of the world for the world, but being able to say that we're flawed.
Right.
Just like,
well, and it's like love.
Yeah.
Willing the good of another.
Love isn't you be whoever you are. Love is you can be better. You can be a better person. And we're not just automatically patriots. Being a patriot is willing to see things change, but realistically, not tearing down everything. Yeah.
True love is desiring the good of another for their own sake. So,
okay, pause. I'm not sure what I mean here about willing to change. I think I was trying to reference C.S. Lewis talking about loveliness, being lovely, about Christ loving us enough to change us, right, and not leave us as we are. So maybe that's what I'm getting at. But it's the way I put it was a little weird, saying we can be better. I don't know if that's the best way to put that.
Well, no, I think that's a good way to put it. Because it's not just like he has come to pay for sin and now everything's good, so now everyone come to heaven. No, he came to pay for sin, but also transform us. And so, he loved us enough to not leave us in our, not only with the charges against us, but then also, okay, you're kind of a thief. I'm going to get this taken care of for you, but we need to make you honest. He loves us enough to do that. The other thing is everything that we've been talking about so far in this video and our path and our what we did before for the first 24 minutes when we covered is this really comes back to the commandment of that speaks about justice in our world, and that falls under honor your father and mother. Honoring your father and mother is where we get the idea of patriotism. It comes from that. And so it's a matter of justice that we love the world enough, ourselves enough to seek to better it.
Yeah. So, okay. So how does it stem from that commandment?
Well,
just for clarity's sake.
Well, uh, well, patriot comes from the same root word as patriarch, and it's you owe your father and mother justice, and they are basically they're your first world government over you. You know what I mean? And then the world government extends from there. And so, and that's why patriotism, um, which is a virtue, is is a derivative of the virtue of justice.
So would you?
Because
Sorry.
go ahead. No, go ahead.
Well, so are you saying that basically, um, a father and mother are representatives of the society as a whole, of where
Well,
you
in a
are?
sense, well, they're representative of a governmental administrative agency over you.
Hierarchy.
Yeah. Yep.
So are you
Yeah.
saying that basically that commandment, just is about hierarchy in general,
Uh,
and that's a
well,
specific manifestation of?
well, it's about hierarchy in general. I guess you could say it that way, and that doesn't mean that love doesn't demand us to love. You know, the virtue of love or the virtue of mercy. I mean, it's they all work together. But if you start to segment and dial it down as to get where the root of different virtues come from, yeah, it's in that. I want to
Mhm.
say it's the fourth commandment, depending upon your list, yeah. So
Well, okay, so I've kind of pinpointed my problem with the wording that I used. The wording I used could be taken and used in multiple ways, and that's my issue with it. Is it's not exactly clear. It could be taken as, um, like you're not good enough. Okay, that in our relations with one another, that you would tell somebody that is like, let's say your wife, you could be better. I don't think that's exactly what I mean. I mean, we are willing to do what's. I don't know. I just don't like how I put it.
well, uh, you know, every good tool can be misused,
Yeah.
and so I think you worded it fine, uh, and so someone that doesn't want to, you know, if you give a certain rule, um, just see it like in school, someone will say, well, I don't like that because it impinges on me because this or that. Well, they don't like the rule, so it's easy to find reasons not to want to follow or to misconstrue what the rule or the um, was laid out to be. And so, no, I don't think there's anything wrong with. Uh,
I think there is, but
yeah.
I think that maybe the point is more that um what if we will the good of another, what is best for them. That isn't always easy for either of you. For them, it might sin might be in the way of them attaining that good, like being right with God. Might be the good that you're seeking for them, or uh, I guess well, proper action you might be seeking them to have, and so it might be difficult, right? Like I accept you, but I don't um accept the sin, right?
Well, and that gets very, 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 very nuanced because it's not our job to go around and point out, you know,
Right,
obviously, to what someone's doing. Most of the time, for people towards us and we towards other people, we may think they should be doing something different. Um, and so what we will do is we'll encourage them, right? We'll encourage them. We'll, we'll try to build their confidence, not in a direction that maybe we feel is wrong, but wherever we see there's something that's good, we're going to highlight that.
right. But we're
And
not going to
that is,
highlight your sin.
pardon?
But we're not going to highlight your sin purposefully.
No, that's not. That's like I say, it's very nuanced, and there are times and places that that happens, but like I say, that's very particular.
Yeah,
So
it's a longer
yeah.
conversation. And we're not just automatically patriots. Being a patriot is willing to see things change, but realistically, not
Yeah,
tearing down everything. Yeah.
true love is desiring the good of another for their own sake. So, um, if I have a friend that is a meth addict and he's really hurting, and he says he'll feel better if I give him meth, and I give him meth, that is not willing the good of another.
Nope.
And so, the only thing I would add to you, us wanting willing people to change, we need to give them the freedom to change.
Yeah.
And plus, we're not the scorekeepers,
Right. We're not.
And so, if we're
Guys.
willing the good of another, then we want the good of another. We're going to do what's good for the other.
Yeah.
And then, according to the scripture, we're going to expect the best from another. And as those people that we're talking about of willing the good for another are closer to us, it gets. I guess there's no way to avoid it. It gets more difficult to do that because you have more invested.
Yeah. You've invested.
When a husband, yeah. So if there's somebody at church and I think, oh, I hope the best for them, I pray for them, I will the good of them.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, but I don't see them all the time. Okay, so I'm willing the good for my wife, or I'm willing the good for my husband, and I'm praying for them and whatnot. But I live with them. I rub shoulders with them. I deal with them every day in interaction. That change that I'm hoping for them, is it really a change that I want for them, or is it because I want to be pleased?
Yeah, because you want them to be better for your sake.
Yeah, right. So
that's a hard thing.
That's a very good point. So you want them to be better for your sake.
Yeah, it's for their sake. Yeah, it's not for your sake, it's for their sake. And so sometimes we fall into the trap of wanting them to be better because we'll be satisfied if they're better. But no, it's for their own good. Mm-hmm. It's not for your good to feel better about yourself. It's about doing what's right for them.
Mm-hmm. Well, and even if our intentions are for our sake, it still could benefit them, but we're losing out because so yeah, it can, obviously our intentions are never going to be absolutely perfect and clean, and free from selfishness, but that's not going to keep the benefit for that other person if they're willing to listen.
Yeah.
Rather than, yeah. So.
Well, and the thing to ask when making a decision is like, is this loving? So like, is it loving to give the meth addict meth? And no. you're in that scenario and you're thinking, well, no, it's not for their good. It's not loving.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Who is it? Was it Jesus that said that? Or I don't know. I can't remember if it's Jesus or Paul. Who talked about that parents discipline children for what seems best to them.
Mm-hmm.
It's basically what's best for them. But God disciplines us what is good for us.
Yeah. So basically, I would say that this kind of comes down to wisdom, right? And prudence, and knowing when the best thing to do is, when to do the best thing. And so the beginning of wisdom is fearing God. And we got to have that down. We need to have the faith down. We need to understand who God is and follow him. And then after that, after we've not fixed our lives, but gotten better and are doing what we should.
Redirected or refocused.
Aiming true to God.
Because we're what's strange to see is that we are flying the plane while we're being taught how to fly a plane.
Right. We're still learning. Right? Yeah, we're still learning.
But we're flying the plane. It's not like this is practice.
Right.
Okay, anyway, go ahead.
Right. This is life. This is life that we got to deal with. And the reason why I said what is because like I said that what is it that I said? I'm trying to remember now. I said when to do the best thing. It's more accurate to say we need to figure out what is proper. What is the good that is proper for this time? Because we always are willing the good, right? For another. We're willing the best for another. But the question is more, what is the best thing at this time? Not when is the best thing. I don't think that that's a great way to put it, but that's what I mean.
Do the right thing at the right time for the right reason.
Exactly. And yeah, this is real life. We can't change the world that we live in. We can't change where we are right now. Um, that's not why we're here. We're here because we have a calling. That is, we need to call others to Christ, and we need to live out our calling. We need to live out our calling, and so we need to deal with our house first before we can deal with the world as in general and help other people. So in the end, we need a balance between understanding and and also staying away from all the evil that exists. Would you say that's pretty much how you would sum it up?
There's a couple things I'd add and get more specific. So we take care of ourselves, like you said, fear of the Lord. But we have to understand that there are actions that we have to take.
Yep.
And I say have to take. There are actions that are going to present themselves to us every day. So you and I talked before, not on air here, but about how voting
Yeah, voting.
is so important. And someone will say it doesn't do anything. Maybe, maybe not. But it's one of those boxes that you have to check, that you have to do. Okay? It's one of those things you have to do. Now, maybe you writing a letter to the newspaper or to your senator or congresswoman saying that you are struggling to believe that your vote counts. You may not quite believe in the voting, but it's one of those simple things that in a free country we've been given. And if it's corrupted, it's corrupted, but we still need to do it. Okay? If you have children, you have a responsibility to know and take action to know what the school is teaching. Okay? And if they're teaching something that you disagree with on a level of principle, and that you feel is
harmful,
perhaps even wicked and harmful, that's your battle. It's not Kazakhstan. It's the school board.
It's where you are.
Right? Where you are. You and I talked about, and it's in the news in Virginia. I want to say Loudoun County, but the school board had a lot of pushback from parents. It was wonderful to see. Mm-hmm. Wonderful parents at that school board speaking effectively and accurately and specifically and succinctly, identifying the problems and challenging the school board. It was great.
Yeah, absolutely.
But there were 30 parents. That school has 400 students. Where's the other 370 parents?
Mm-hmm.
Now, we're not going to expect that all the parents are going to think the same, and all of them are going to be in unison. But we would think that there would be more than 30.
Right.
That would be against, for example, CRT indoctrination.
Okay, pause.
Or LGBTQ indoctrination.
Yeah, and the thing is, people are constantly obsessed with things that are outside of their control, which is one of the main things we talked about. That's why this is a perfect example, because it's like a lot of people are concerned about what's happening in overseas, in the wars over there, but a lot of people fail to recognize the difficulties and things that they have to deal with here. And I talked with two friends at church yesterday, and we talked about this a little bit. We talked about how our perception of things that are closest to us, we look at that and we think that the things that are closest to us are so much more difficult to be consistent about or make decisions. And then we look at, like, talking about news and stuff like that. That's so much easier for us to focus on than our actual responsibilities. And sometimes our actual responsibilities are so close to us that it makes us not want to do them. It's like, if we imagine, I gave this example. I said, imagine if we were like on the battlefield or something. It's much harder to be willing to fight up front when they're literally there and could stab you, it's more difficult to do that than um, to fight from afar or you know stuff like that. Um, because it's right in your face and the risk is great. And I don't know what you think about this, but um, I think that maybe some of the reason, or one of the reasons why a lot of parents weren't there is because they're afraid. And um, some of that fear is not unwarranted. But I think that that might be one of the reasons because it's scary.
Mm-hmm.
What do you
Well,
think?
there's a lot of, yeah, I think there's a lot of reasons why they might not have been there. Many of them probably very legitimate, working. And so, but there's a lot that weren't at that school board meeting because they didn't think it was a problem,
Yeah.
and that's a problem in itself. Okay, but then there are that's a problem, and then you have another group that uh, if you took the time to explain it to them, they might be outraged or feel like, all right, yeah, I don't want my children getting indoctrinated with bad ideas,
Right.
and so maybe that would spur them on to support the well spoken parents that gave their testimony and have a lot of numbers there, and and so uh, but the sad part about it is how can they not know that? Ignorance has some, what do you call it, is somewhat of a mitigating factor
Yeah.
and can reduce our culpability, but not when again, if you view your children as the most important thing, one of your probably your most important vocation that you have, if you're going to have children, then you should be aware of this, and so that's another group of people that are just unaware. And then there are those who think that falsely think that the school just does the right thing all the time because they're so much smarter and they went to school and they don't have an agenda. They just care for the kids. And the reality is, education's a business, and we're not against business. We're not against getting paid. We're not against all that. But the teachers union does not exist for the benefit of the students, although it can have a benefit on the students, but it's not there for the students. It's for the teachers and the administrators and for their jobs and their employment and their benefits. Fine and dandy, but they control things. So anyway, there's a lot of reasons why they wouldn't be there.
Yeah.
And the school board, if you have 30 there, the school board can say, well, this is just as a small representation of the freaks and the right wing extremists. We don't need to listen to them because the rest of the parents aren't complaining,
Right.
and so it's, I mean, but like you said, you're talking to your friends at church. Um, Someone will go and complain about, um, how the children are being sexualized and how it's so wrong, and they're mad because they're watching the news. And then when they're out with coffee with their friends and someone brings up that, I think drag queens reading hour at the library, I think we should just leave that alone. I think kids need to know about that. And that person that was railing and yelling at the TV says nothing because in that conversation they don't say, wait a minute, what are you talking about? This is deviant behavior. And so like you said, when it's in your face, it's a little harder to fight the battle than a battle that you think you fought because you agree. You maybe you actually rightfully discern the situation and you're on the right side of things, but you think because of your angst and your anger, we feel like, oh, okay, I've done my part. Well, have you? Because when you went out to coffee, you didn't. you didn't disagree with somebody because you didn't want to look foolish, or you didn't want to look like be labeled a right wing extremist, etc. So
Yeah.
yeah, you're right. It's easy for us to do that.
Well, it's amazing how much of this goes back to the idea of practical wisdom, which we talk about a lot in prudence, because that's really what we're analyzing right now is how do we approach these different situations where it's not simple, it's complex. There's a lot of factors and mitigating factors and different intentions and different ways of approaching these situations. And they're not super easy. And I was mistaken when I said that we don't talk about solutions here, but we point out the problem is uh, what we what we consistently talk about is how do we approach the situations that are closest to us in this video that we made. And so I think that it's crazy how much of it goes back to that, and the loss of that in modern society is such um, a burden for this generation. And that's why I think C.S. Lewis trying to redirect us to accept practical wisdom again instead of uh, just, um, well, that's a big emphasis that he has in Abolition of Man, is bringing back practical wisdom and practical philosophy, and practical thinking, stuff like that. And it's definitely needed. We need judgment. We need to know how to discern what we are called to do at these given times. And yeah, it's complex. There's a lot of thinking involved that has to happen, but though in the end, our action is what ends up mattering, right? Is
Hmm.
how are we going to react at the time of these situations?
Hmm.
And I think that I want to urge people to, and us as well. We need to approach it with patience. I think that might be one of the biggest things that I realized is if we are anxious, then we're not going to be able to make right decisions. But if we take things slowly, patiently, and with consideration, then these different scenarios are going to become a lot easier. And that person that didn't speak up about the problems with the drag queen story hour thing, if that person was patient and was not anxious, they would have spoken out, probably. If you're principled and you're not afraid of what they're going to think or afraid and anxious about your position, then you're going to have a level head and be able to figure out when is the appropriate time to say this or when is the appropriate time not to say this.
Hmm. Well, and you mentioned that something, a lot of things are intricate and complex, and that's a whole nother issue that you and I basically kind of agree that complex issues really are a simple issue stacked upon another, and so you have to just take the time to take that, simple issue, set it aside, and go like, okay, that's one building block. What's under that building block? And then you look at the next step, and pretty soon you have a string of very simple ideas or concepts or precepts that stack together and as a whole might look complex. So I only say that to say this is that um, on one hand, you don't have to, a parent doesn't have to go to the library every day and study on education or on philosophy or on, uh, I think in general, those families at Loudon School, high school, uh, all the parents combined, um, I would guess many of them, and I would even maybe say, I would hopefully say a majority of them, they may not be able to articulate a certain point, but they have a good BS meter. And so if they were in at that school board meeting, and when they heard both sides of the argument, then they would say, hey, wait a minute, that one person there seems to be saying something really normal that I agree with, and that other person that's saying that the outlandish thing, the leftist progressive stuff, that sounds totally ridiculous to me. And I agree with that. The person that's speaking for what I believe. And so so that BS meter, we can't minimize the weight of that too. And that's why candidates are supposed to debate one another and communicate to the public so that we kind of understand where they're coming from, because we may not understand the intricacies of the Gaza Strip,
Right.
or the Palestine situation, but we can listen to both sides and get an idea of, what side is sounding more sane or more logical. And some people will think the other side will sound more logical, but at least you have more people there. And I still tend to hope that in a given number of people, that they may have a reasonable BS meter. Now, I might be in fantasy land, and but I think when it comes to parents, though, that have children and that they care for them, that I still feel pretty confident that if they heard both reasons, for example, the over sexualization of children and the drag queen reading hour at the library, that if they heard both sides, they would clearly not want their children to participate and not want the school to push those kind of things.
Yeah.
And so even if they don't feel like they know it that well, just to be a part of it's kind of like what you and I talked about before, and our vote, Matt. There's things in the free society, our vote and the value of our vote, we may feel is diminished, but it's something that we do have. And so, and for the time being, thank God it worked out this last election in our opinions.
Yeah.
But so that common person, me included, if I hear both sides, it doesn't take long to realize where the BS is coming from. And so, anyway,
Yeah.
just thought I'd throw
And
that.
that can't be the end all be all, obviously, and that's not your
Mm-hmm.
point. The point is
Mm-hmm.
that we are able to, uh, even if we don't have full reasoning for every little thing, there is a certain level that we have an intuition, a common sense that everyone
Mm-hmm.
has, um, and common sense doesn't dictate everything, but it does
Right.
give you an idea of what um, is going on. And um, I would say that that's part of practical wisdom and practical judgment. Is we have to make judgment. What I mean by that is judge whether or not one way is a way we should go or the other is not, or one way
Mm-hmm.
is where people in general shouldn't go, and this way they shouldn't or should
Mm-hmm.
go. Um, and so common sense helps us to recognize that um, in speedily, quickly
Mm-hmm.
in certain cases. Um, but anyway,
Well, and that highlights the importance of leadership. And if your town is 3 people, you don't need a mayor. It probably would be very inefficient to have a mayor. But if you have a town of 2,000 or a town of 10,000 or greater, you for sure need a mayor or an administrator of some sort, and and that and so but that administrator doesn't rule by fiat. He's not a dictator. And that's where the common citizen steps in, the one who's working at the mill or working at the dentist office or working at the hospital or at the school or on a farm. They are doing their part for society, and the administrator is selected to make things efficient. that okay, a group of people, a smaller group of people is running the whole city, but that doesn't mean that the farmer and the mill worker and the dentist office people and the school teachers and all these people don't have a say. They can voice their opinion, and that's that interactive, engaged public. Doesn't mean they have to have a political science degree. Sometimes that's a hindrance,
Yeah.
depending upon where you got the degree. But anyway, I don't mean to digress. Should we move on?
Yeah, go ahead.
Indoctrination. You would think there would be more than 30. You know, my hat's off to those 30. So there are things like voting. If you have children, taking care of their and being responsible for their education. We mentioned going to church. I'm a Christian. I can just stay home and sit in my closet and pray and hum and read my Bible. It's like, no, you need a church. You need people.
Yeah. People exist whether or not you like it.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So,
So
I'm
true.
actually AI. So
Can
you
you pause?
don't have children, and so you don't have to go to school board.
Sorry, I find this really important. People exist whether or not you like it. This is my main argument against individualism is you are not the only person that exists. If you were the only person that exists, then it is all about you. Okay. Whatever. But in society, in the world that we live in, there are people, and therefore there are obligations. And I think you point this out in one of your writings. I don't remember what it was, but I believe you pointed out that something about people exist, and so we have obligations automatically because other people are there, and we have to relate to them in some way. And so you are born with parents. That's just the way it works. They're there whether or not you like it or not. So you have obligations because you're born in a world that is designed in such a way. And so it's very important to remember that although individuals make up a society, it's more accurate to say that families make up society because without the family, you have no individuals. And so, if we think about Adam and Eve, yeah, Adam was created, but what happened? He realized, because God showed him this, but he realized that there was no suitable partner for him and that he needed somebody else to help him. And so, God took his rib and then made a woman for him and demonstrated to him that he can't do this alone. He needs a partner. And so that's the way that the world works is you need a man and a woman in order for an individual to be born and exist. And so we automatically have obligations based on who are our parents, what is our country, what are the rights and privileges that we have, and what are the things that we can or can't do. Things like that.
Mm-hmm. Well, and you know, the Lord Jesus is the only mediator between God and man, but He chose that man would need others to help him in his what would we say, quest for holiness and to reach heaven. We need more than just our relationship with the Lord. We need our relationship with others because the Lord knows our independent streak, that we don't want to be under or attached to or interdependent with anyone. And so he's made it such that we need the community, we need the family, we need the church to help us in our desire to reach heaven. And so it's kind of what you're saying is that on one side, yeah, we're individuals, but God made it such that we need others.
Yep.
We need, and so
people exist whether or not you like it.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So, uh, so you don't have children, and so you don't have to go to school board, but you totally refuse to acknowledge the irrationality and unreality of transgender.
Yep.
You don't have to go try to find a transgender person to disagree with them. And in fact, generally, they're not the worst of the problem. It's the promoters that are
Yep.
promoting it. But
The
those are
promoters.
just victims and in delusion, That's what
Yeah.
or promoters do, right?
Yes.
Euphoria of a popular movement without realizing that they're denying reality. But you don't have what is the definition of being a promoter? He promotes. To go and search
Yeah.
them out.
One note.
Uh,
Yeah. What you just said is really important, and I just want to say this because I feel very compelled that this is not an easy thing, and the I think the main issue that compels the transgender movement is the lack of meaning that people feel, and the medical establishment that has systematically um, removed the organs of kids and individuals. It's disgusting. They're the ones that promote it because they can make money from it, but they're ruining people's lives. And I just wanted to say that because it's a really problem. It's a big problem,
mhm.
and I do want to reiterate what you said here. It's the transgender people that are confused and have been led to certain decisions, not always on their own, sometimes with them actually being pushed by society, and they're not the main issue. The main issue are those that are seeking to profit off of these uh, these terrible procedures that ruin people's lives.
Well, yeah, I agree with that. And when there's money to be made, somebody is going to find a way to produce that. And but the also the other thing is too is there are people that are mentally confused, but they're also activists, and so they
There are
realize that
those. Yep.
they realize that there's that society as a whole don't accept their lifestyle, and so they feel a little marginalized. So, what's a way to fight marginalization? Well, let me make more of me in the society, and then I will have comrades in my quest for, um, you know, um, whatever it might be. And so, some of these people, to feel better about themselves, they want to get everybody, on the train. And so, why didn't you have young people question whether or not they are male or female or bisexual or homosexual before? Because people weren't promoting it in order to assuage their sense of guilt or the sense of marginality. And it would be like thieves feeling bad that society feels targets us as being unfair and unjust. Why don't we just promote theft
Yep.
and make it mainstream, and then we won't feel bad about ourselves anymore. And so anyway, it's a real dirty business. It's very diabolic. But those people that are caught in its web, it's something that sorrows the heart. It's like, especially the young people,
Yeah.
you know. And I think it was one of the communist um, rulers said, "Give me your education for one generation, I'll run the country." And Satan and the diabolic. That's not a hidden uh, truth, or that's not a hidden weapon. They know it and they use it all the time. Sadly,
Yeah.
but
Yep.
the war is going to present itself to your doorstep.
Yeah.
And that is the war that God will hold us accountable for.
What did you do with what you had?
What did you do with what you had? What did you do with what you were faced with?
Man, I
Well, I
love
think
that part.
I'm not. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
About cigars, but that's off the subject.
This
The electric company should have been paid. But anyway, go ahead.
I was just gonna say that this is another one of my favorite parts. Is the what did you do with what you had? That's another chilling statement.
Yeah, for us and anybody. Yep. Yep, absolutely. And when the Lord says you love the Lord with all your heart and all your mind and all your soul and all your strength, and we've said it before, but it's kind of the same thing. God is asking us to, what did you do with what you had? Well, I only had $5 of love. That's enough.
Right.
If that's what you have, I'll accept it.
Yeah.
And if you have $1 million of love, I'll accept that. And I'm not looking at quantity, I'm looking at quality, but I'm looking at the heart and the motivation. And so, yeah.
Yeah,
What
well,
did you do with
if we think about the parable of the talents, the one guy talents is money. The one guy was given 10, the other guy was given 5, and the other 1, if I'm thinking correctly. And the thing is, none of them deserved to be given anything. It's not like they were like, hey, we did this for you and that, so give us some money. No, they were given that money, and they were supposed to do something with it. And the one guy, he just buried it, didn't do anything with it. And again, it comes back to what you just said. It doesn't matter what the quality or the quantity was. It's the quality of it. Like, hey, you buried the money in the ground. What? What are you even thinking? I'm just afraid to lose it. Well, you're gonna lose it. Sorry. You're afraid to lose it. So you're gonna do nothing with it. You're just gonna sit on it. So what the master is gonna ask us in the end is, what did you do with my money? Where is it? What did you do with it? And for those that just didn't do anything with it, that's a dangerous place to be. Because he's going to hold us accountable for what he gave us to do, the things that he gave us in order to do something with. And if we think about the woman who gave 2 pennies, she gave everything she had, and it wasn't much, but she was more righteous than those that would give $1,000 out of their abundance. Because she literally gave everything that she had to live on.
And, someone will say, yeah, I bet some good things happened in her life afterwards. God really probably blessed her. It's like, no, that might have been all she had to live on. And maybe she struggled for the rest of her life. It wasn't a get rich fast scheme that she was using. She truly gave it away. And whether God rewarded her in this life or not, that was not why she offered it. She gave what she had.
Yep.
So,
sorry. I think a good example is, honestly, we're me and you, we're not the best people in the world. We don't do everything right, but we made a decision that we're going to start a podcast. And that's where we are, is we're doing what we can with what we have.
What we can do with what we have. Exactly. Hey, thank you for taking the time to hang out. And I'm going to stop it here.
Sorry, before it ends.
Yeah, we can close it here.
No, I don't want to close it here.
Okay.
I'm saying before it ends, the statement here of we started a podcast and we're trying to do what we can with what we have. It's been difficult these last 2 years, is it now?
Or coming on 2 years, sure.
3 years. It's not been easy, but we've been trying. We've been seeing what happens, and so when we say do what we can with what we have, or do what you can with what you have. It's like, we're not saying it's easy, right? That's not the claim here. The claim here is that we're called to do it and to try, to give it our best. And we don't always give our best. That's for sure. And we don't always do it right. But that's what it comes down to, is what did we do with what we had? With the opportunity that we've been given. And I understand the difficulty with a lot of people finding meaning. But the thing is, we don't define our own meaning. And that is much more freeing than you might realize. Is realizing that we don't we don't decide what we are supposed to do. We don't decide who we are. God is the one that decides that. And the world really tries to instill it in people that you've got what it takes. You know what you're doing. You can do it all. You are great. It's like, that's just deceiving ourselves. And no meaning can be found in ourselves. And I just want to reiterate that main point, because I think it's really needed. Is what we should be asking is, what has God asked of us to do? And that's the only way we can find meaning.
And so we can ask God, and we're not going to get a letter in the mail from him.
Right.
We may not have an angel visit us. We're not going to have a dream. We're not going to have a vision. But what you will find is that if I'm standing outside along the roadside and I have a shovel in my hand and people are working, I'm like, I wonder what I can do. I don't know what I can do. And someone will say, well, you got a shovel. Oh yeah. Okay. So I'll help dig this ditch. Or, you've got a broom. You can sweep up the roadside. Oh yeah. Yeah. Or you got a red vest on and a stop sign. You could hold. Oh yeah. I guess I could. We sometimes forget that God has already, it says he gives gifts to men and women too. He gave them the gift of speech. Sometimes we wonder how Adam and Eve would have turned out if Eve didn't have the gift of speech. It would have been very lonely. But he gave men and women gifts, and he already gave them. We already have them, and yeah. Anyway, I'll stop there.
Let's watch the rest. If there's anything else, then we can
please hit the subscribe button and watch for our videos in the future. And please leave a comment if there's anything positive or negative, or things that you would like us to talk more about, or if you want us to be quiet, we'll read that. Mm-hmm. But we probably won't be quiet, will we?
Nope.
No, but all your comments are appreciated.
Yep.
And we wish you the best. May Godspeed be yours. May your sails be full.
And always,
may your sea be calm.
And always aim true.
Always aim true.
Yep.
All right, Benching. See you later.
Good. Yep.